Hello, my name is Beth Dixon, and this is a video series based on Vicki Borlaug's PowerPoint presentation on population mean, variance, and standard deviation. I wish to thank Mrs. Borlaug for allowing me to use her PowerPoint to make this set of videos. This is part 1 of this set. We have an example about a book cart. We will let X, our data value, equal the number of books on a cart, and we want to find the mean, variance, and standard deviation. We have the number of books as our X, and that can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The probability of X for 0 is 0.05 or 5%. For X equals 1 is 0.10 or 10%. For 2 books, 0.15 or 15%. For 3, 0.25 or 25%. For 4 books, 0.30 or 30%. For 5 books, 0.15 or 15%. Remember that the sum of all these probabilities will add up to be 1, or if we added them as percents, it'll add up to 100%. The first thing the problem asks us to find is the mean, and the formula for the mean is mu equals the sum of x times p of x. We will use our table to keep up with our numbers, and we want to follow the order of operations and multiply the data values x by the probability of x in the next column. For now, I want you to concentrate on the procedure of the columns. We will look on how to use the calculator to help you with this procedure in the second video for this PowerPoint. After multiplying, and again that's our first step, the x times p of x, we will label that and write that in our third column so that our third column is labeled, and by the magic of PowerPoint we now have the numbers, and we simply get that by multiplying the first 2 columns together, the x times the p of x, as our formula tells us to. 0 times 0.05 gives us 0. 1 times 0.10 gives us 0.10. 2 times 0.15 gives us 0.30, and the rest of the numbers down below. Remember that the formula is not complete with just the x times p of x. The formula says the sum of x times p of x. And it's the sum that we need to do next. So we need the sum of those values we just found. So we will take the sum of that third column. And the sum of that third column, if we added those numbers together, would give us 3.1, and our mean, or mu, equals 3.1. The next part of the question asks for the variance. So I will remind you of the formula for the variance here at the bottom of the screen. It is a more complicated formula, and I could read it out here, but instead of reading out the entire formula, let's break it down into its 4 steps that follow the order of operations. The first step would be to subtract each data value from the mean. That is the x minus the mean, or x minus mu. That is the first step, and we will put it in the 4th column, which is the next column on our list in our chart. Step 2 would be to square each of those values. That will go into the next column after that, which is the fifth column. Step 3 is to multiply each of those values that we have squared by the probability, or P of x value, that's associated with that particular x. Then the last step, or the fourth step, would be to add up those values in the last column. Now we have our table or chart filled out. We are ready to actually do the calculations. The first is, or back to the step 1, is to take x minus the mu, or the data value, minus the mean. Because the mean is 3.1, x minus the mean takes each x value and subtracts 3.1. And by the magic of the PowerPoint, the subtractions are filled in. The next column is step 2, which is to square each of the differences we just found. Remember that negative 3.1 squared will give us a positive 9.61. And recall that when putting that in the calculator to square a negative number, you will need to place the negative number inside parentheses so that it squares that value correctly. And again, by the magic of we have the numbers filled in, and you could pause and double check yourself for that. The next step is to fill in the last column. This is the third step, where we take those squared values and multiply by the probabilities found in the second column, which is the P of x's, and once again here are those results filled in by the magic of our PowerPoint. The fourth step is that capital sigma, which tells us to sum up those values that we just found in that last column. So we will need to add together those numbers in the last column, and when we sum up that last column, we get 1.89, and that is our variance. The last thing we were asked to find is the standard deviation. Recall that our standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So the standard deviation will be the square root of 1.89, or 1.3748. From our original chart, we now have the mean of 3.1, the standard deviation of 1.3748, and the variance of 1.89. Please remember to follow your teacher's rules for rounding. This ends part 1 of this PowerPoint. I will pick up with how to use the calculator to fill in those same columns in our next video in this series. As always, if you need additional help and are a Walter State student, please stop by and see me in the Math Lab in MBSS 222. Thank you.